Hello and welcome. Good to know that you're watching and joining in our conference hosted by the Agence Française de Développement, the AFD. France has a strong policy on development and international solidarity, and the AFD puts that into action. Whether you're watching us in Europe, in Southeast Asia, or anywhere else on the planet, whichever time zone you're in, we hope you'll enjoy our conference. We have a host of highly qualified speakers throughout the next 2 days and some fantastic topics. The title of the conference is Southeast Asia's Challenges to Sustainable and Inclusive Development. When you send in your questions, click on the questions to the right of your screen, and you might like also to write where you're joining us from so that we get a real global feeling of interaction from all of you. I'm Renee Wyndham, former BBC broadcaster, media trainer and journalist for European television stations. Together with my colleague Karen Coleman, who also hails from the BBC, we'll have the pleasure of moderating your conference over the next 2 days. But before our plenary session, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Yazid Ben Said. Yazid is Regional Director for Southeast Asia for the Agence Française de Développement, the AFD. It's my great pleasure to welcome Yazid, who will start off our 2-day conference in style. Yours is the floor, Yazid.
Hello, thank you, Renee. And hello, everyone. I hope you hear me. Dear Excellencies, Ambassadors, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be here to open this conference on Southeast Asia and its challenges to a sustainable and inclusive development. As AFD Regional Director for Southeast Asia, it's an honor to welcome all of you. First of all, let me tell you a few words about the genesis and the reasons of this conference. Last year, AFD adopted its first regional strategy for Southeast Asia, in which we identified 3 priorities for our future activities, corresponding to some of the main challenges faced by Southeast Asian countries: climate change, biodiversity loss, and increasing inequalities. These topics will obviously be discussed during the conference and more specifically during the roundtables. We also highlighted the need for stronger and enhanced partnerships with all development and institutional actors in the region, such as ASEAN, MRC, but also donors, World Bank, ADB, JICA, EU and its member states, and other actors as well, like the private sector. As part of the role of a regional office is to better grasp and address regional issues, we decided to set up a 2-day conference, gathering stakeholders from the development community to open discussions and exchange experiences and solutions on a number of key issues, all aligned with the priorities settled in our new regional strategy and that AFD intends to support in the region, like the need for enhanced cooperation, the energy transition, the biodiversity protection in the Mekong, and climate and environmental justice. So here it is. I would like to thank all the speakers for agreeing to share their experiences and participate in what promises to be an insightful debate. I particularly welcome the high-level panelists who are with us today to present the challenges development in Southeast Asia and to discuss cooperation between ASEAN and the development actors. Your strong mobilization illustrates, I think, the importance of these issues for the future of our region. I would like to thank all of you, dear audience, who joined us behind your screen from all over Southeast Asia and Europe, from Jakarta to London, via Bangkok, Hanoi, Vientiane, or Paris, just to name a few of them. Thank you also, of course, to my colleagues for their continued efforts in organizing this conference, and in particular for these last days and nights. And last but not least, good luck to René and Karen, our 2 moderators for these 2 days. You will play a key role in the running of the conference, and thank you in advance for making everyone respect the timing, me first, and animating inspiring discussions during the different roundtables. To the audience, René just said it, but feel free to ask questions and, of course, enjoy the conference. So thank you. I'll leave the floor again to René so that she can detail the content of these 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Yazid, for that very nice opening and a great start to our conference. I appreciate your kind words. We're now launching our plenary session. I'm speaking to you from a very sunny morning here in the south of France, typical Mediterranean weather in late September, and we'll be looking at the work of the Agence Française de Développement in Southeast Asia. To start off our conference, as Yazid said, we have a group of highly qualified specialists who will be setting the scene for our plenary session. They'll be outlining what the main challenges are to supporting sustainable and inclusive development, not helped, of course, by COVID, which has brought unforeseen new challenges. In this plenary session, our speakers are, you will see them give me a wave when I mention their name, our keynote speaker, the Director for Sustainable Development at the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs in Paris, Philippe Lacoste. Bonjour, Philippe. Acting Chief Economist at the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, Joseph Zveglic. Hello, Joe. Jean-Pierre Macelli, Director of Operations at the Agence Française de Développement. Bonjour, Jean-Pierre. And Long Naro, Director General at the PPWSA, the Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority. Hello, Naro. In this session, we'll start with a keynote speech, and then we'll be hearing from all three panelists. And finally, the most important, as we've mentioned, Yazid mentioned it too, we look forward to your questions because it's your conference and you will inject the life from all around the globe, we hope, into the conference. We'll be hearing the presentation soon, but first I'll give a short introduction to the AFD and their work with ASEAN. 11 countries make up Southeast Asia with well over 600 million inhabitants. The AFD works in 7 of these countries, so we'll see how agencies in Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia major on helping these nations to transition towards fairer and greater resilience in the face of climate change. How are they aiming for a low carbon region and leveling up between people when there's currently a wide gap between rich and poor? France is committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which will be at the forefront of all our discussions. We'll look at how to achieve peace, gender equality, education, accessibility to clean water and food and healthcare, while mitigating climate change and preserving biodiversity in the region. It's not pie in the sky, the goals are realistic. Above all, we'll concentrate on certain key issues like reducing carbon dioxide, managing land, sea and rivers, and reducing inequalities between people. We'll look at how humans, nature, climate, and environment are all closely linked. During our first day today, we'll take a broad look at the major issues facing Southeast Asia. Tomorrow, we'll be finding solutions to some of these issues. So tomorrow we'll hold a series of roundtable discussions looking at more specific issues like cooperation in energy transition, preserving biodiversity in the Mekong region in the face of the pressures of civilization, and dealing with the challenges of inequalities in the face of climate change and degradation. But first, I'll set the scene for today with a little bit of background. Southeast Asia's GDP is growing by more than 5% a year. Some people work in agriculture or fishing, but hydroelectric energy and other industries are flourishing too. And that means countries rely heavily on carbon-intensive fuels. This has many downsides, especially harming biodiversity. Forecasts say that by 2050, half the region's biodiversity could disappear. We'll be hearing in more detail tomorrow about how the Mekong Basin is a source of economy for several of the countries and how the AFD are working to safeguard biodiversity. The fast-paced modernization across the region has also brought with it the loss of thousands of acres of forest, degradation of the marine environment, poor waste management, and air pollution. Other challenges include an aging population, unequal access to education and healthcare, and gaping financial inequalities, not to mention natural disasters. But it's not all doom and gloom. On the contrary, in this conference, we'll be looking at some positive solutions to these challenges in Southeast Asia. As so often, it's the economy versus nature. But they're not mutually exclusive. There are ways of benefiting both. The AFD is working hard to improve the situation. There's still time to act to halt climate change, but it's urgent. So, what is the AFD doing? To answer this question, it gives me great pleasure to open our plenary session with our keynote speaker, the Director of Sustainable Development at the Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs in Paris, Philippe Lacoste. Philippe is a qualified civil engineer and career diplomat. He's represented France in many countries, including Chad, the Comores, Senegal, and the USA. Philippe will be setting the scene for us and showing us what France is doing, its commitment to mitigating climate change in Southeast Asia. So a big welcome to you, Philippe Lacoste.
Merci, merci beaucoup René. J'espère que ma caméra fonctionnera. Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to warmly thank AFD for organizing this conference. I'm glad and honored to be able to open your discussions today. Southeast Asia is a crucial region for France, especially when it comes to development cooperation, and more broadly to protecting global public goods, as I will explain in a moment. Jean-Pierre Marcelli will talk later about AFD's strong and diverse actions in the region. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to present the French priorities regarding development policy and Southeast Asia in order, like René mentioned, to try to set the scene. Firstly, I would like to point out that our action is guided by France's Indo-Pacific strategy, which lays out our vision for the region and a stable, multipolar order based on the rule of law and free movement, as well as a fair and efficient multilateralism. In September of this year, the European Union also presented its comprehensive approach for the region, which shares one of the cornerstones of France's vision, the centrality of Southeast Asia, and more specifically, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. This priority was translated in March of this year with the launch of a development partnership between France and ASEAN. These partnerships, of which AFD is a key actor, will be built on solid and long-standing foundations. For example, in addition to AFD financing, which between 2015 and 2019 accounted to nearly 3 billion euros of projects in the region and at the regional level, France has more than 20 technical experts already working in the countries of the region and more to come in the coming month. I would also mention the personal formal research structures, such as the Pasteur Institutes, the French Agriculture Research Center for International Development, or the French National Research Institute for Sustainable Development. Some people think that all these French research institutes are based in Africa. It's true that we have a lot of experts in Africa, but we have also some, and increasingly in Asia. This development partnership is a concrete demonstration of a new approach that France is implementing through a programming act on exclusive development and fighting global inequalities, which was adopted by our parliament over the summer. This act guides our development policy in Southeast Asia. It makes clear France's commitment to defend common goods such as health or the environment by renewing the objectives, the means, and the methods of French development policy. With this new legal framework, France is giving itself the means to more effectively With its legal framework, France is giving itself the means to more effectively contribute to fight global inequalities and protect global public goods. It aims at tackling the root causes of a crisis by supporting the most vulnerable countries towards a more resilient and exclusive and sustainable growth model. It also aims at fully integrating development policy into the international community multilateral framework to collectively address global challenges as set up by the 2015 United Nations Agenda, the Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the Addis Ababa Programme of Action on Financing for Development. To meet these challenges, this bid set up an upward strategy on the resources allocated to ODA, in line with the commitments of the French President of the Republic to reach 0.55 of gross national income in 2022, compared to 0.44 today. A first step towards the 0.7% target. This bill is not only doing more, it is also aiming at doing better. It established a change in method, in approach, focusing on partnership with partner countries, with organizations, as well as with all development stakeholders, including South Asia, where many challenges must be tackled, spanning from biodiversity loss to climate change vulnerabilities. We believe that the health and socio-economic crisis we are going through bring many challenges, but also many opportunities. This is a vision that we have promoted as we will keep on defending on international summits, such as the World Conservation Congress of the IUCN, which took place in Marseille, France, but of course the upcoming COP15 on biodiversity and the COP26 on climate that is scheduled to take place in Glasgow in November. Without spoiling the discussions that are planned tomorrow, I would like to end by pointing out that on the protection of biodiversity and the fight against climate change, it is crucial to keep on strengthening our actions through projects that have demonstrated impact at the regional level in the areas of energy transition, agroecology, and healthy and sustainable food systems, air quality improvement. Just to give you an example, and I'm sure that there will be many more during this conference, I can mention our 150 million euros contribution to the ASEAN Catalytic Green Facility, ACGF, a multi-donor initiative in favor of green infrastructure and sustainable connectivity through AFD. I look forward to follow the discussions of today and tomorrow, and thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Philippe Lacoste. You can see the Mediterranean sunshine, it's shining straight in, but don't worry, it won't last. Thank you so much for such a very good beginning and also for showing so clearly what the AFD's objectives are. Our next speaker is Acting Chief Economist at the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, Joseph Zvedlich, and he's speaking to us from Manila. The Asian Development Bank says it's committed to fighting to eradicate extreme poverty, which I mentioned in the introduction, as well as promoting social and economic development. The ADB makes sure that projects that are financed are sound and sustainable. Above all, projects are scrutinized for their environmental considerations, which is very good news indeed. Dr. Sveslic has a PhD from Harvard University. He graduated in economics, specializing in Asian studies at Arizona State University. And he'll explain the 3 priorities for development in Southeast Asia and the effect that COVID has had, which we'll be hearing over and over again, I think, on the conference, at so many levels: sanitary, economic, and environmental. Joe will look at the prospects for each country post-COVID and what changes this has made to future projections. So welcome to you, Joseph, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you very much, Renee. Ambassadors, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Asian Development Outlook is ADB's major annual publication, providing a comprehensive economic analysis of 46 economies in developing Asia and the Pacific. This update revises the forecast that we published in last April. In addition to the revised outlook, which I'll present today, the report includes an in-depth analysis of the theme, Transforming Agriculture in Asia. Let me turn now to the report's key messages. Developing Asia continues to grapple with COVID-19 amid renewed outbreaks and unequal vaccination progress. Recovery paths are diverging in the region. Successful vaccination and containment strategies are boosting the recovery in some economies, as they can take advantage of the broad recovery in global demand. However, in others, growth is held back by rising infections and slow vaccination progress. We forecast developing Asia GDP will expand by 7.1% this year, which is down slightly from our April forecast, and it will continue to expand by 5.4% in 2022. Despite a recent pickup, inflation will remain moderate at 2.2% in 2021 and 2.7% in 2022. The main risks are still associated with COVID-19, including the emergence of new variants, the waning effectiveness of vaccines, and slow progress in vaccinations. So let me now look at these issues a little more carefully. Let's begin by looking at where Asia stands in the pandemic. New and more infectious variants are driving COVID-19 waves of outbreaks across developing Asia. New COVID-19 cases in developing Asia, which is shown in black on the left chart, peaked in May at 105 cases per million. It declined to 25 in June, and then rose again to 43 per million in July. While the May wave was concentrated in South Asia, the purple line there, the most recent waves have been in Central Asia, the blue line, Southeast Asia, the brown line, and the Pacific in green. The right chart shows that vaccination progress still varies considerably within the region. Vaccinations have progressed well in the People's Republic of China, PRC, and some smaller economies. But 2/3 of the region's economies have vaccinated less than 30% of their populations, and this is largely due to supply-side constraints. Less than 30% of developing Asia's total population has been fully vaccinated. This is well below the US and EU, which have exceeded 50%. And the slow and uneven progress on vaccinations is unfortunate because vaccines are changing the nature of the pandemic by making COVID-19 a less deadly disease. While vaccines do not stop virus transmission entirely, they are highly protective against severe cases of COVID-19. The chart here shows that the case fatality rate along the vertical axis declines significantly as the share of fully vaccinated people within economies increases along the horizontal. Vaccinations are also changing the way governments respond to new outbreaks. When COVID-19 cases rise, policymakers typically tighten restrictions on mobility and economic activity. But analysis in our report shows that new restrictions tend to be milder in economies with higher vaccination rates. The strength of the recovery has varied across economies in the first half of this year. Recovery was relatively strong in economies like the People's Republic of China, Hong Kong, China, and Singapore, where governments successfully contained virus outbreaks and quickly rolled out vaccines. Growth was more subdued in economies where vaccine rollouts were slower and major outbreaks occurred, such as Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, very relevant for our conference here this week. In recent months, renewed virus outbreaks and ongoing supply-side disruptions across the region, resulting in slowing economic activity. This left table shows that purchasing manager indices, or PMIs in many economies, have fallen below 50, and that's the threshold that separates improving from deteriorating conditions. The main factors behind this are the virus outbreaks that led many economies to impose restrictions and ongoing supply chain disruptions. The right chart compares economies globally. While we cannot infer causality from this plot, we do see a clear positive correlation. Manufacturing activity measured by PMIs tends to be better in economies with higher vaccination rates. Turning to inflation, the left chart shows that consumer price changes have risen since the beginning of 2021 after the decline last year. Despite this increased rate, inflation remains manageable in most of the region. One of the contributing factors to rising inflation is the increase in global food and energy prices, which can be seen in the right chart. Energy prices have risen from lows reached in 2020, and global food prices are now at multi-year highs. But as we show in the report, global commodity prices are not the primary driver of price inflation in Asia, as regional and domestic factors tend to dominate. The rebound in external demand across economies and sectors is supporting developing Asia's recovery. In the early phase of the recovery, the PRC's exports outperformed. That's the red line in the chart on the left, as it got its outbreak under control early, allowing it to manufacture and export while others were still in lockdown. But exports of other developing Asian economies rebounded strongly this year, that's the green line, and are catching up to the PRC. The region's exports overall are performing better than global exports. We can also see the broadening of demand across a wider range of products in the chart on the right. Initially, the rise in external demand was for pandemic-related goods, those in light blue, and electronics, those in dark blue. This year, though, demand for other products, such as machinery and vehicles, as well as textiles and footwear, has contributed to the rebound. Also on the external front, remittances to the region continue to be resilient. For developing Asia as a whole, remittances were up 15% in the first quarter of this year, but performance varies across economies. The left chart shows changes in remittances last year on the horizontal axis and changes in the first quarter of this year on the vertical. Most bubbles are above the horizontal axis, indicating remittance growth this year. A few economies saw strong remittances last year and continued improvement this year, including Bangladesh and Pakistan. Those are the bubbles in the green in the chart. Other economies, though, such as Armenia and the Philippines, saw remittances decline last year, but are recovering this year, the bubbles there in blue. However, a few economies, including Indonesia, the Lao People's Democratic Republic, and Thailand in Southeast Asia, are seeing further declines this year. That's the yellow bubbles in the bottom corner. In contrast to resilient remittances, tourism remains in the doldrums. The right chart shows tourism arrivals down 90% to 100% in most economies, although it has rebounded in Georgia and the Maldives. Those are the red and blue lines in the chart. These economies have adopted policies to attract tourists despite the pandemic, and they host many tourists from Europe where vaccination progress has been good. Turning now to how macroeconomic policy has responded to the shocks, fiscal policy in the region remains accommodative this year, with consolidation expected to occur only in 2022. As shown in the chart, changes in the fiscal balance as a percent of GDP were largely negative in 2020. That's the blue bars. And this is due to increased spending to support the economy, as well as falling revenues due to the pandemic. Fiscal balances are expected not to change much this year in most economies. That's shown by the orange bars. And this means many economies will avoid substantial withdrawal of fiscal support this year in a still uncertain landscape. The exceptions are the 4 economies that had the largest fiscal impulses in 2020. That includes Hong Kong, China, Mongolia, Brunei Darussalam, and Singapore, where fiscal balances are already returning towards pre-pandemic levels. A general shift to fiscal consolidation is forecast starting in 2022, as shown by the green bars in the graph. Moving on, monetary policy stances in developing Asia remain similarly expansionary. In response to the initial impact of COVID-19, major central banks in the region cut policy rates during the period March to July of 2020. And this is shown in the chart on the left. But since then, most monetary authorities have not loosened further, but neither have they reversed course and tightened. As a result, the monetary stance remains accommodative. As shown in the chart on the right, real interest rates, here obtained by adjusting nominal rates for current headline inflation, that's the blue bars, or adjusting nominal rates for forecast inflation in 2021, the yellow dots. And either way we calculate it, they're generally low everywhere and even below zero in many economies. With substantial monetary and fiscal support in place, regional financial conditions remain stable. This is reflected in Asian equity markets on the left chart, which have remained stable or have risen this year. It is also evident in risk premiums in the region on the right chart. Regional bond spreads relative to US yields have remained relatively stable since the second half of 2020. While these charts do not reflect the impact of the financial problems of the property company Evergrande in PRC, or the announced plans by the US Fed to begin tapering its asset purchases, more recent data does not show major movements in these series. So taking these into account, all of these current conditions, the growth outlook for developing Asia remains positive, but with slight downward adjustments due to continued COVID-19 outbreaks. As I mentioned, regional GDP growth is forecast at 7.1% this year, marginally revised down from our 7.3% forecast from in April. Growth is expected to moderate to 5.4% in 2022. But the recovery paths differ across the region. For example, projections have been upgraded for East Asia, which has avoided large outbreaks and made better progress on vaccinations. However, these upgrades are more than offset by downgraded forecasts in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the Pacific, where key economies have struggled with domestic outbreaks and slower vaccination rollouts. These divergences in growth paths are reflected in where we expect GDP levels to be in 2022. For developing Asia as a whole, GDP next year will be 2.5% below the level of the pre-COVID trend, but the gap varies substantially across subregions. East Asia avoided contraction last year, and with its strong performance this year, GDP in that subregion will be close to its pre-COVID trend. In contrast, Southeast Asia has the largest gap, coming in at 8.6% below the level of pre-COVID trend GDP. Large GDP contractions last year have been compounded by recent virus outbreaks that have held back recovery. A similar story holds for the other subregions to varying degrees. Now, even with our more modest growth forecasts, risks to the region's outlook remain tilted to the downside. COVID-19 remains the biggest risk. Continuing outbreaks may be driven by new virus variants, slower than expected vaccine rollouts, or waning effectiveness of vaccines. This could hamper economic recovery, as we've already seen this year. At the same time, policymakers must pay heed to other risks. Geopolitical tensions remain elevated. Global supply chain disruptions could hinder recovery in manufacturing. And normalizing monetary policy in the US and other advanced economies could affect financial markets here, such as through sudden capital outflows and currency depreciations for some economies. Taking a longer view, policymakers must focus on the continued risk of hazards from climate change and natural disasters. Now, let me close here with the key messages. I'd like to say that we feel there is hope for developing Asia's recovery. Successful vaccine rollouts are turning COVID-19 into a less deadly disease, and this is changing the nature of the pandemic. Where vaccinations have progressed most rapidly, a greater degree of normalcy in people's lives can return, along with a pickup in economic activity. With that, I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
And thank you very much, Joseph. That was very enlightening indeed. Just interesting, you've brought up so many interesting points, but one of it is, as COVID seems to be so closely linked with economic recovery, is there any sign that Western countries who've had far more vaccines are not doing enough to distribute their vaccines properly to Southeast Asia?
That's a good question here. I mean, in part because what we're seeing in terms of where vaccine rollouts have been slower is that it's supply constraints. It's not demand at this stage. We haven't yet got to the point where the vaccine hesitant are the ones that are keeping vaccination rates lower. So from that simple point, I would say that if more can be done to provide vaccines to these countries that are, have populations that are definitely looking to be vaccinated, then we would hope that we can work with partners to make that a reality.
Thank you. And one other point you brought up about tourism, Southeast Asia, more than many other parts of the world, I think, is dependent on tourism, partly for its income, for its GDP. But tourism is down everywhere. Do you feel it's hit Southeast Asia in more definitely than other parts of the world?
Well, I think probably the worst hit have been the small economies like the Pacific Island economies, even where they didn't have a domestic outbreak. They, because they've closed their borders to tourists to avoid an outbreak, that has had a huge impact on the economy. Where economies are more diversified, the effect of tourism has been somewhat less. But still, if we look at an economy like Thailand, where tourism does make up such a big portion of its GDP, it has been very hard hit by the decline in tourists. That said, until we see more vaccinations rolling out, a larger percent of the population, I think foreign tourists are going to be a bit hesitant to come back. I think the good news on that front, though, is that there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. People have been stuck inside. They're going to be wanting to get out. Not all of us, unfortunately, are on the Mediterranean right now, and we will want to be looking to get to those beaches again, those historical monuments, the cultural monuments, all of those things that made Asia such a wonderful place. And I think once we've managed to get the pandemic under control, that people will start to come back. But until that happens, going backwards to lockdowns again because of a premature opening is something that governments are all trying to avoid.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer, Joe. And I think it's the uncertainty really is for all of us, but possibly worse in Southeast Asia. People really still can't plan properly because of not knowing if there will be more lockdowns, if there'll be new pandemic, new variants. So thank you very much for that answer. And also for your very enlightening speech. I learned a lot myself. I was busy making notes. Now we come to our third speaker of this plenary session, Jean-Pierre Marcelli. Monsieur Marcelli is Director of Operations at the Agence Française de Développement, the AFD. Jean-Pierre will speak about the role of those who lend money in the face of so many challenges. He'll look more closely at the role of public banks, the main priorities in the area, and how important it is to have a consistent strategy throughout the region. Jean-Pierre will then outline the strategy and response of the AFD in the Southeast Asia region, including to food security, climate change, and not forgetting, of course, the extra challenges of COVID. So now we look forward to your presentation, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you so much, René, and thanks to Joseph, to Longnaro, to Philip, Yazid. I'm very honored actually to join you for this introduction for this very important region for the AFD group. So as everybody knows, the major challenges in Southeast Asia are in climate change. Of course, we see it everywhere in Southeast Asia, but also in the world. Unfortunately, this is growing up. The energy transition, therefore, actually to mobilize as much as possible the renewable energy, which can be cheaper and, of course, less polluting and less affecting the climate. Biodiversity, which is fantastic in this region and a source of revenue and decent life of people, and growing inequalities and very often, unfortunately, again, increased by the effect of COVID-19, as Joseph just underlined. And so those challenges are really at the heart of AFD activities in the region, and both in terms of operation and, of course, research projects. The latter, the research, enable us with all our partners and clients to increase the knowledge we do have of the issues studied in order to better meet the needs of governments and population. So this is for the major challenges we feel in the region from what our partners tell us and our clients ask us. So our strategy, the AFD regional strategy, which has been identified by our regional office, Yazid and his team, is built around three strategic priorities, which are therefore encouraging transition towards low carbon trajectories. This means being more efficient economies, less consuming energy, so therefore less costly and more competitive, and resilient territories, meaning so dealing with the people, with their environment of life. So this is about supporting the preservation and sustainable management of the terrestrial and marine environment, both ground and sea priorities, and mitigating the social imbalances and reducing inequalities on all their faces, aspects, and notably gender, which is at the heart of our priorities. This strategy is in line with AFD Group's 2018-2022 strategic orientation plan, but also, of course, with a French strategy for the Indo-Pacific that just my friend Philippe just presented. This strategy highlights AFD Group's strong climate ambition, who are 100% Paris Agreement focused, with an ambition of having at least in the region 70% of co-benefits, climate co-benefits in our financing. This means that this is a very ambitious expectation. It means that each project should really have 70% climate content, climate benefit, either through mitigation or adaptation. This is very difficult, very demanding for our team and our client, but actually we do manage. I could actually elaborate more on that. And so in order to face these challenges and to effectively support sustainable development through SDGs, it is necessary to prioritize nexus approach, meaning that when you want to work against climate change, you have to address both in the same time, I would say, Earth, planet priorities, and people. You can't protect the environment against the people needs, and you can't just help the people forgetting the planet and the environment. And actually, we see now within the youth, within the expectation of the population, they want both. They want to be protected against the effect of the climate change. They want to see the reduction of biodiversity loss and also having more decent job and revenues. This is what we actually we follow. So within those priorities, we try to mobilize, to work with partners, not to be alone, of course, because no challenges is out of size, even if now AFD activity is around in the world around 12 billion euros, and in the region over the last 5 years we invested around 5 billion euros. This is not enough. We need to build coalition. So within those coalition, of course, we have the Asian Development Bank, we have the World Bank, we have the national banks. I will come to it a bit later. We have the EU, the KfW, the EIB, and we have also the public development banks, which are really very much dear to us, because public development banks, so-called PDBs, they finance themselves with both public and private funds through markets and with the support of their governments, they finance SDGs. They can mobilize other actors. They can mobilize the Green Climate Fund. They can mobilize the French Fund for Global Environment. They can also use the Catalytic Fund, which are numerous in the region. They can also compensate, unfortunately, sometimes the reluctance of the private banks to engage in so-called non-profitable sectors, I would say, or not enough profitable actors for the private sector, which are for objectives which are essential for the preservation of the environment and the improvement of the people life condition. Also, in times of crisis, and we saw it notably in the last COVID-19 crisis, which is still ongoing, as Joseph actually confirmed. They can play counter-cyclical role. When the others pull out because they become shy, they want to profit, the public development banks actually have to increase their activity. We did so with the support of the French government. We did so with our partners in the region. As a matter of instance, we reallocated 30% of credit line with PTSMI to finance earth infrastructure in the region last year. We also invested grants for the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs on ECOMOR to finance laboratories which were in the front line of the pandemic last year. So collaboration is at the heart of our priorities. And in order to be able to address larger projects, as I said, in that regard, the Finance in Common Summit, which was organized last year in Paris and which will be organized this year in Roma, and hopefully next time in the future in Asia, mobilize, imagine, 450 public development banks, which can generate actually almost 10% of the total annual global investment in the world every year. Within those public development banks, 450, with many of them from Southeast Asia, there is a club called IDFC, which is a network in the network of 26 national banks and multinational development banks, which is actually now chaired by AFD, and which is a real platform to coalesce, to join forces for SDGs, for the climate, for gender. Just at the beginning of IDFC, they invested 100 billion euro for the climate, and this was in 2014. In 2018, it was 200 billion euros. Imagine the strength of working together. But we have also, as partners, as friends, to work together. We have the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, to which AFD contributes, which is also a perfect example. $100 billion per year are lacking to finance infrastructures, and this fund, the AGCF, which brings together at the Southeast Asian level public development banks, helps dramatically in mobilizing also the private sector in this direction. So in Southeast Asia, aware of the leverage of effect of such regional and national public banks, we have chosen to strengthen this partnership. And over the last year, 40% of what we do invest in the region is co-financed with, as I said, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, European Union, and also the funds such as ETP. And sometimes you have very concrete example. As a matter of instance, when in Cambodia, putting together in our means with the EIB, with the EU also, we managed to mobilize 400 million euro for the largest treatment plant of the region. So in a nutshell, this is our priorities, this is our strategy, and with a special emphasis on coalition to meet the very ambitious SDG targets that Southeast Asia deserve. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. That sounds quite promising in the face of all the adversity that they have faced this year, especially from COVID, as you said. You mentioned that the strategy for reducing inequalities in the region, gender and as well, gender inequalities. Can you give some practical examples of how the AFD is working to reduce inequalities and reduce gender discrimination?
Thank you, Renee. For gender inequalities, we want to be a feminist agency. We are very much climate, and we want and we become, with the support and expectation of our government, very much feminist, because females are 50% of the humanity, so we have to be on the same level. That's it. Just this is the first equality, and so it means, when we work with our partners, with ministries, with banks, with development banks, but also private banks, because we are a group. We have also Proparco, which is a private sector subsidiary, just for the private sector. We discuss and we say, okay, what about in the same time, I would say, improving food security, improving food production, but making sure that women, that girls will have a decent, a fair address in the project. Let's make sure that in terms of training, in terms of wages, in terms of access to finance, they will have the same rights. They would have the same possibilities, and it's very easy because most of the people, they want it, but sometimes it's not built like that from the beginning, and it's also the case in France. It's a case in Europe. It's a case in AFD. So it's really it's a behavior of being fair at every instance, in every action. Not to introduce, sometimes without being completely conscious of it, a sort of injustice. So because so this is what we do and this is what I call nexus. Okay, we want to mitigate climate change effect. We want to adapt against climate change. We want to improve competitivity. So let's actually I would say, to kill two birds with the same stone, and it's very possible. And it's just matching health issue with people issue, and people embark women and girls. This is what we work. It's very concrete. It's a behavior. It's a concept.
I like it. I like your values, and as you say, even in Europe, it isn't always the case. But I'm really glad that is the fundamental feeling of AFD. And you mentioned that people want good jobs, but at the same time, they want to protect biodiversity and the climate. So what kind of jobs are being created in Southeast Asia?
When we work with, for instance, a policy loan, because we have major actors, major countries, and they want to improve their policies, and with development policy loan, and the Asian Development Bank is doing a lot of it, and we come along, and we try, of course, to bring our touch. We just don't provide financing. We want to make a difference because we are bilateral, and our governments ask us, okay, let the countries say, okay, it makes a difference that France is on the round table. It's not just only about Monday. So there is a dialogue, and in the dialogue, either for a credit line, for a project, or for a development policy loan, we try to say to push this address. We say, okay, decent job. Let's say we want to protect the environment, so we need a new type of jobs to protect the environment. Energy efficiency, renewable energy need a new technology. So to encourage training, to encourage higher value jobs, and for people to be able to a new value chains, and therefore you can generate jobs, and those jobs, if it is about new technologies, can allow better wages, because you are more competitive and you deserve better salaries. If it's about food security, if you protect better your soil, if you use better biomass, if you protect your production against climate change, and we see it, it's quite terrible every month, from floods, from soil erosion, and so I mean the yields will be better, and the products will be of better quality. Sometimes they will use less pesticide because you've got a better management, so customer can pay more for that, and or you spend less on pesticide. So this is how you cope revenues, decent life, and the health. And also you have, René, what we call
nature-based solutions.
Thank you so much for the translation. Solution based sur la nature, nature-based solution, and they're very, very fruitful. Very fruitful. I mean, nature can offer protection and can also sometimes improve your business model, because nature works very well when you invite it to how to fix your issues. So it's a new attitude, and our clients, our partner, has for it.
Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre Marcelli. I love your energy, your enthusiasm, and your comprehensive answers, as well as your speech, which gave a huge amount of points, which I'm sure will come up in the discussion. And if you're watching from somewhere on the planet, whichever, Southeast Asia, Europe, or anywhere, do feel free to write questions on the panel on the right, and then we will hopefully be able to discuss some of them at the end, because your questions to the panel are more important than mine, and really we want to hear from the world. So you're out there, come in with your questions. We look forward to it. Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre. And now over to Southeast Asia and our last speaker, Long Naro. And Long Naro was appointed this month Director General at the PPWSA, the Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority in Cambodia. Congratulations on your new job, Long. Long Naro has degrees in engineering and finance, and also over 30 years experience in water supply. Naro will present a case study in Phnom Penh showing the challenges of access to water. He'll explain how the whole situation has improved over the past 20 years and how Phnom Penh has been successful at reducing the rate of water loss. Then he'll look at what's happening today and, most importantly, how the AFD have helped and supported his work. He'll also show how this knowledge can be spread to other regions in Southeast Asia and beyond. So we're looking forward very much to hearing what you have to say. Over to you, Naro.
Thank you very much, the chairman. So good afternoon to everybody. And today is very honor and pleasure to attend the AFD conference on the Southeast Asia Challenge to the Sustainable and Inclusive Development. And we are very appreciated to introduce our water challenge in Phnom Penh to everybody and to know that how we are able until today. But however, before I start to speak for all of this challenge, I would like to also share the experience what we have until today for the improvement. So I have to divide into two improvement. First is the improvement that we have been started in 1993 until year 2002. And then after year 2002 until today, we are called expansion of our service to the people live for the water supply to the people in Phnom Penh city. For the improvement on 1993 until year 2002, we have so many problems, especially caused by financial deficit, no maintenance and investment. And also we have mismanagement because our management at time is very bad to operate and run the system. We have also low collection efficiency. Money, most of the money is not go to the utility, it's mostly to the private to get the money by the bucket. And on another hand, that we have very high non-revenue of water is over 72%. And also our tourists below cost that cannot survive to run the water utility. To improve the utility to become more sustainable, we have been take a remedial action, mostly to improve our management, that we always call the word turn around to the management. On another hand, also we improve the capacity building. That means to let the people to have more qualified staff in order to run the utility. Also, we have to improve the collection efficiency in order to meet for the improvement, also share the investment for the water supply authority. The main target is for us is to reduce the unaccounted water. It means the water loss. And also to revise the water tariffs by supporting from the government in order to make the tariffs to become cover the cost of the operation. There is some success factor of PBSA that I have been learned due to the problem that we have out of 6 elements. We are, based on our experience, we have been looked into the improvement. One is the financial support from the donor that with the ADB, World Bank, France, Japan, and World Bank, we did a lot of support. They did a lot of support to us in terms of improvement of water treatment plant, improvement of distribution system, and also standardization of equipment in order to reduce the unaccounted water. Besides this one, also we look into the chain of management because we have to set up a new vision, new mission, and especially the new task force in order to prepare a good task force to manage the operation of the utility, including also revising our organization's structure, including the corporate of culture. On another hand, we're also looking into the improvement, what I just told you from the beginning, to train our staff by sending to different countries to get this experience in order to come back to work for the company. We also improvement the capacity building, but we should look also to the motivation of the staff in order to get them to work for us harder and harder. On another hand, also for the political support, we have to discuss also working with the bilateral donor and developing agency, including the government, to accept our revision water tariff to cover the operation. And also another one is more important is to get the customer to understand how to use the water, including also how to pay to the water. That is the most important. If you look into our result that we have until 2020, you can see that the service coverage expansion in 1993, just only 20%, now become 82%. Increasing of water production, you can see in the graph from 63,000 to 615,000 cubic meter per day. And also you can see the distribution expansion and also the from 280 kilometer to 3,000 kilometer, and the customer from 26,000 to 400,000 customer that we have until today. So that is the result from the improvement and expansion. And you can look also, we start to have a profit from 1995 until today. You can see that our profit by 2000 is around 20 million US dollar. So looking into the 20 years of collaboration with AFD since 2002 until today, so you can see there is input from AFD is around 45% of the total investment cost. Until today, AFD have been help us to support for 10 projects with around 300 million US dollar, and there is these 2 projects is now undergoing. So the 2 projects is undergoing is expansion of the water treatment plant 400,000 cubic meter per day, including another phase 2 with 195,000 cubic meter per day, including also water transmission main with around 128 kilometers over the city of Phnom Penh in order to meet the demand of 100% in year 2030. The majority input to from AFD to PSA, as ASEAN, as we work together until today, AFD have played an important role as a facilitator and catalyst in the new development challenge to PSA. AFD assists PSA to the establishment of roadmap for future improvement to meet CSDG in 2025. Assist PSA to export project evaluation, providing institutional support, impact mitigation, including of the facility financed under AFD. Assist PPSA to strengthen their financial and technical autonomous. Assist PPSA to improve for the improvement of institutional development and capacity building for the continuity and sustainability of the utility. Participation with PPSA on the path of innovation and sustainability in challenging the new context of macro environment. Besides this one, also AFD have been also support us in terms of supply of water to the low income, especially to the social responsive. We have 4 elements inside there. One is the water for all that we have to work with the low income area, to have a low income area, to have the direct access of water by making subsidiary to the low income to get the connection. On another hand, we also were giving a water supply to the tenant, worker, and student that have been immigrate from the province to stay in the city to study and also to work. Besides that one, also we work on the standpipe water supply, especially to the area which is the suburb area, which have no direct connection from us, but therefore we have a standpipe in order that the truck can come to collect the water by selling with the tariff very low. It's 500 real per cubic meter. On another hand, for the social responsive, we have also looked into the assistance of water supply, especially to the soldier, and also humanity to the COVID problem what we have now, especially for helping water supply to the area that have the problem with COVID, especially the area that taking care to the COVID problem. Looking into the collaboration, we also learn from the collaboration. With the collaboration, we learn and have been have a knowledge a lot in terms of experience by working in the water utility. With our sharing, we are also sharing our experience to the local water utility, especially in the province, by working close together with JICA, including ADB, for assistance to the water utility in the province. Also for the regional, we also making twinning program with other water utility in Vietnam, also in Laos, including also other utility by sharing experience and making also study tour to get more experience among each other. So thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to have more comment and also question to our presentation. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much indeed, Long, for showing us the situation in your part of Cambodia, in Phnom Penh. Very interesting what you say, that we hope that by 2030, there could be 100% coverage. That means in 9 years, there's a lot of work to go. How do you talked about priorities, water for people in areas where COVID could be more of a problem, for students, for medical people, and so on. How do you work out the priorities?
Because we are working closely with the, example, municipality of Phnom Penh and also Ministry of Health in order to prepare all our necessary in order to prepare all necessary to help him, especially on the area that they're taking care on the health to treat out the COVID people. So we are making a direct access water to the people that, especially in the area that they're taking care about COVID. Guaranteed place, especially on guaranteed place. On the other hand, we should also guarantee 24-hour water supply to that guaranteed place by putting our people permanently stay there in order to look after them in the area of guaranteed place.
Thank you, Naro. It was very interesting to hear how you are improving collection of water and efficiency, and also sending your staff to other regions so that there are other countries to learn what's being done there. Just out of interest, do staff from other countries, other water associations in other countries also come to Phnom Penh to learn what you have been doing to improve your situation?
Yes, I think that every year we have also the people, guests from different countries, especially also from what they call the Africa, from Southeast Asia. And also we are working with this, what they call the water supply management university support by the French government, what are located in Montpellier, and that they are now working with us, and they sending the management from different countries to come to have the what they visit our water supply authority, learning about how we manage the water supply authority in terms of financing, operation, including also capacity building and human resource to our staff. So they are coming every year. Especially this year, they cannot come because very strict of guarantee in Cambodian. So now they are looking to have another preparation in Morocco, and they would like to invite me to go there to give them a presentation on the management of water supply in Phnom Penh.
Terrific. That's really good news. Thank you completely for such a good news story altogether about improvements, which is what we're hoping to hear a lot about over this conference. And you've given a very concrete example, Naro. Thank you so much. Well, now I'm going to throw the questions open to the audience, to the floor. And we've got a few coming in already. One from Priyanti Fernando. And this is a question, I think, for each one of you. Priyanti says, Southeast Asia has a very different political and economic country context between them and considerate inequalities between and within countries. How does the macro analysis of all three of you speakers take these differences into account and translate into inclusivity? Not an easy one, but I'll start with Jean-Pierre, if you can. I can't see you, Jean-Pierre, but can you hear me? No, I'll go to Joseph then. Joseph, are you able to explain how one can deal with the inequalities?
Okay, I guess let me sort of split this into two parts. One is where our forecasts come from. We actually work with our country economists in each of our resident missions who develop the country chapters, and we build these up into our overall forecast for the region. So each of the country forecast is based in good grounding in the realities of the country situation, while at the same time coming through the full filter of us through the research department to pick out and probe assumptions and make sure that we're telling a consistent story when it comes to creating the forecast. That's just sort of the macro, where the growth numbers and inflation, et cetera, come from. But you have a more difficult question, which is the inclusivity side of it, which really goes beyond just the growth question. Let me think about some specific ways that we could address inclusivity even at the time of the pandemic. So there's been these big government programs to try to keep economic activity going. We know that the poor will be more likely to spend any funds that they receive, and therefore continue to help to stimulate the economies. So targeting the poor, even at the time of pandemic recovery, becomes very critical. In the Philippines, for example, we provided some support by using innovative data, in this case satellite data, to try to get a much more granular view of where poverty was in the country, so that the government could then take that on and be able to target its support programs better. So that in that way, by providing the government support to make sure that the least off are being targeted, you can deal with inclusivity at the same time that you're trying to support general economic activity.
Thank you for that very helpful answer indeed. Naro, would you like to add something there about dealing with inequalities within countries and within inside countries and between regions?
Through the experience of the water supply in Phnom Penh, I believe that what we are doing now is try to make what they call sustainable water to the citizen in Phnom Penh. Especially, we have been also progressing our progress in according to the master plan what we have. So we have the master plan. Until today, we already have third master plan, and we are working with the master plan in order that the people in the city of Phnom Penh should have water 100% by the year 2030, what is related to the CSDG. So that is what Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority try to do now, and try to find more assistance, especially from ADB, from AFD, from World Bank and JICA, in order to assist us for the development, in order to meet the CSDG by year 2030. That is our main target.
Thank you very much, Long. And another question has come in anonymously for you, Long, in fact, which is, what's your biggest difficulty in working with international finance institutions? Joseph will probably have something to add to that too. Okay, Naro.
So far for me that to do this one, I think that we have a little bit also what I just told to you before. That's mean that because of now is the COVID problem, and a little bit difficult for the expertise also to come to assist us directly in our country. So usually we are working like online right now. So that means also makes us also a little bit delay on our progressing. That is one part. But on another part, also because of inside the country, there is this COVID problem. The expansion work and the construction work may also delay because due to the restriction of the area, and also due of the imported material to the country may delay because of this COVID problem. So that also impact to our operation, including the investment, that to meet our target what we plan until today. That is the major impact to us.
Thank you, Naro. Joe, are you aware that in some of the projects there can be delays and this can cause problems?
Well, I think let me speak a bit to the relationship between donor funding and some of the executing agencies, recipients. There can sometimes be tensions, and I think as Long Naro had mentioned, you have some clear targets that you need to make that you're responsible for. On the other hand, the donors will also be looking at not just necessarily making the construction targets, but being sure that we meet other areas of ensuring the sustainability of the investment, ensuring that if land acquisition is needed, for example, that all of the ADB policies are followed clearly. the environmental aspects of it. And so that can sometimes be frustrating. But I think that when those partnerships come together, when we have those discussions, even if there might be some difficulty along the way, the final result that you get is a project that does have a longer lifespan, is something that was done that didn't create other development problems, such as dislocating people or creating those environmental messes that need to be cleaned up later. And that aspect of it can where it comes together, can work very well as a sort of a team effort. But with every team, of course, you have to work through the different goals to make sure that we're all pointing in the same direction.
Very good answer. We are all human beings, and of course there are errors here and there. We've lost Jean-Pierre. You still can't hear me, I don't think. There's a question that you would answer well, but I'll get Naro and Joe to have a go at this one. Have the AFD and ADB, this is from Quentin Bourdeau, who's written the question, have the AFD and ADB developed a strategy to support the development of green and digital skills development in Southeast Asia? I'd be interested to know what kind of strategy. I mean, Jean-Pierre is the best one to answer, but otherwise, Joe, do you know how these green skills and technological skills are being developed? Joe.
Thank you, Renee. I sent a link to a resource that my colleague Matteo, working in the background, is helping me to look a lot smarter than I really am.
You're very smart already.
That points to some of the work that we're doing in our operations on digital technology. One thing I would like to point to as well is as a financier, we're also looking at areas of how we can support green finance. For example, through our work in the ASEAN member countries on developing local currency bond markets, we have a whole set of support that is looking at providing, for green bonds, the standards for green bonds, and as well as environment, ESG, environment, social and governance bonds. And this way, the financing can be something that is well linked to also ensuring that we achieve SDG goals.
Thank you. I'm afraid Jean-Pierre is still not with us, and of course he's in the best position to answer. I won't give it to you, Nairo, unless you have anything else to add. But what I would like to ask you, Nairo, is what future prospects for collaboration with donors could you envisage? What kind of future collaboration?
Yes, I just told you already. Until today, we have the third master plan, and we are working now with JICA for what they call re-updated of the master plan number 3, in order to see what is the trend between now until year 2030. So in order to prepare the project from now in terms of water expansion, because by the year 2030, we should have our capacity for more than 1 million cubic meter per day. This is a big project for us that we have to taking care now, and therefore collaboration now with AFD, JICA, and ADB, and especially also in terms of preparing our policy, in terms of capacity building to our staff is one of the important for us to meet our target by the year 2030. So therefore, collaboration with the donor is very important for us in order to meet the target by year 2030.
Thank you very much. And one last quick question, because we're coming towards the end. I'm so sorry we've lost Jean-Pierre, because he would give different answers from the rest of you. He's got a different discipline. But what do you think, apart from COVID, which we've spoken a lot about, what do you think are the main risks to developing Asia's recovery? What are the key steps that we should take? Some of them are unpredictable, like COVID was, but there are other risks that might be more predictable. What kind of precautions should we take to counter these risks? Joseph.
Well, a couple of the risks that we're looking at, sort of the more near-term risks, are the normalization of monetary policy in the U.S. and Europe. And there, a lot of the heavy lifting is going to come on the side of the Federal Reserve and the ECB in ensuring that they're communicating to markets very clearly what their intentions are. You know, for example, when the Fed's recent comment came out, markets didn't move very much compared to what happened in 2013. So we didn't see that shock because markets were getting information. It's marginal changes. It's something that's happening in the future, and so it may happen a lot smoother. As long as the Fed keeps that up, hopefully we won't see the kind of shock that we did from those changes. I think the biggest issue that's going to be facing us as we get past COVID really is climate change. And trying to move towards zero carbon growth, and so I think this conference is very timely in thinking not just about that huge problem that we're all facing, but also what are the mechanisms that we'll be able to use to provide that support to make those changes.
Thank you. At least it's good that we are aware of that. We couldn't see COVID coming, but we sure can see climate change coming. And let's hope people see the urgency of how quickly it's coming as well, because that will speed up improvement, hopefully, in all directions. Very last question for you, Naro, from Sovisnia Sun, who says, I've been wondering for a long time why European developed countries who have a high level of digital and green technology, why don't they give these skills to developing countries like Cambodia, which have to suffer far more from climate change even now? What's your view, Naro? You're muted.
It is very difficult to answer for this question, because it's not belonging to my utility. It is, I think, mostly belonging to the Ministry of Environment that are working mostly on this subject. So, but I think the government of Cambodia is ready to cooperate with this type of what they call climate change. I think that they are now working very closely with different donors for the climate change, what I understood until today. That is what I learned that I can tell you.
Thank you very much. I thank you, especially both of you, for filling in, because we lost Jean-Pierre Marcelli. So both of you have also tried to talk on areas that were not totally in your area, but you've done extremely well. Many thanks for answering. Many thanks to the audience for your questions. Thank you all to our speakers for starting off our conference in such a lively, energetic and positive way. Thank you to Yazid Ben Zayed, who I'm pleased to see has come back on screen. Thank you very much, Yazid. And also to our keynote speaker, Philippe Lacoste from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you also to Joseph, to Jean-Pierre, who we can't see, but we can see his initials, and to Naro. And also to the backstage moderator, the technicians who are working extremely hard, the conference organizer and session organizers, Louise Marchand and Charlotte Lelayo, who've worked incredibly hard to organize this session and the whole conference. But most of all, thanks to you, the audience, for watching in great numbers, I'm glad to see, and tuning in across the globe for the past 90 minutes. As we've heard, France, through the work of the AFD, is totally committed to sustainable development overall, and especially in Southeast Asia. The AFD is concentrating especially on revitalizing biodiversity and mitigating climate change. France will be explaining her commitment to sustainable development in forthcoming international summits, including the IUCN summit and COP26 in Glasgow in Scotland in November. The country continues to work on the objectives agreed in autumn 2015 at COP25 in Paris under the Paris Agreement. Well, after that bright start to our conference, we'll now be taking a short breather. We're ending exactly on time, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. So please be prompt, have a nice rest. And during the next session, my kind colleague and good friend, Karen Coleman, will be your moderator. See you again promptly in 15 minutes' time. From this session, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Charlotte. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Charlotte, all well and clear. Thank you for your lovely message, and you will do amazingly well, as you do in all the conference I've watched you in.
Thanks very much, Rini. You were brilliant.
It's very sweet of you, and you will be exactly or even more brilliant.
So I just want to check. Louise, Charlotte, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can indeed. Great. Okay, very good. So we, just for those of you joining us, just remember everything is still online as far as I can gather. So if people are coming in from outside, they can hear and see us. And if you are watching us from outside, we'll be back at the appointed time, 10:45 Paris time. In the meantime, I'm just checking with my guests. Good. So I see Michael is there. Good morning to you, Michael. Hello.
Good morning. It's
Good.
Afternoon here. But
It is afternoon. That's right. Yes, it is indeed. Massive time difference. Okay. And Michael, it's Michael Tenney, isn't it?
yeah, just call me Michael Penny. Yeah.
Good. Now, who else do we have? We have Armida Alice Jabana. Good morning, Armida.
Yeah. Connecting. I think she's not on the stage yet.
Okay. And is it UNESCAP or UNESCAP? What's the best way to pronounce it?
Sorry, hello.
Oh.
ESCAP.
ESCAP.
Hi, good afternoon from Bangkok here.
Good afternoon, Armida. Great to see you. So it's UNESCAP. Is that how you would like me?
Yes, UNESCAP.
UNESCAP. That's great. Okay. And is it, can you pronounce your name for me, please?
Well, just call me Armida, otherwise.
And in the introduction is Alice Jabana. Is that correct?
Yes,
okay,
correct.
Okay, just bear in mind people are watching us online as well. So we'll just go through a couple of checks. Okay, that's great. Lovely to see you, Armida. So now, I think Min is here, Mindy Tang. Hello to you.
Hello, my first name is Mindy.
Good.
Right. Good morning, everyone.
Good. So first name is Mindy. That's great. Okay. That's good, Mindy. I can see you. I think you're fine. Excellent. So the only person we're waiting for is the ambassador.
Yeah, I'm checking on it.
Okay, very good. Okay, we have 10 minutes to go. If you could just stay on the line, seeing as we have 10 minutes.
Louis, j'envoie le message à Insa. J'envoie un message à Insa là.
So while we're waiting for the ambassador, I'll just run through the agenda again and the way we're going to run our roundtable. So when we start, even though we are actually being seen at the moment, when we start formally, I will introduce the session, the theme of it, and all of you. And then I will call on each one of you to address the key issue that you're going to talk about. And if you can stick to about the 10 minutes that you've been given. And then, so I'll ask each one of you one by one to make your initial opening remarks based on the topic you're going to present on. And then after that, I'll bring you all together and we will have a Q&A session. Depending on how we go time-wise, I may just, after each one of you speaks, I may ask a follow-up question like Rini was doing as well, and then bring you all together. Is that okay? Good. Okay, very good. And Charlotte, can you just go through the choreography of the very start of it? Are you going to lift the slide and then we start? What way would you like to do this?
Yeah, I'll change the slide. Then Ronnie will open up with a few words, and then she'll hand over to you.
Yeah,
great.
Correct.
That's great.
Okay, so the ambassador just sent me an email. He's still in another event, but he's about to close and join us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello again, and welcome back to our Agence Française de Développement conference. I hope you had time to digest some of the many ideas that you heard in the plenary just now. And also I hope you had a decent cup of coffee or tea in the interval while you were waiting. Now we'll be looking more closely at how the challenges that we're facing that we discussed and the cooperation between ASEAN countries and the Association Française de Développement, the AFD. The theme will concentrate on how these two agencies cooperate to help and support the countries of Southeast Asia. They're transitioning and how they're working to try to speed up the transition to lower carbon across the whole region. Our moderator for this session, I'm delighted to say, and for several of tomorrow's sessions as well, will be my colleague and very good friend, Karen Coleman. Karen's a highly experienced moderator with a strong background in journalism. She's an award-winning journalist and broadcaster for the BBC and national radio in her native Ireland. And that's where she's speaking to us today, from Galway in Ireland. As well as working in Brussels and Strasbourg, reporting on the European Parliament, Karen is an experienced media trainer as well. So now over to Karen to introduce her panel for the first round table. Floor is yours, Karen.
Thank you very much, Rini, and a pleasure as well to be coordinating this conference with you. Hello, everybody. You're all very welcome to the conference. As Rini said, I'm Karen Coleman. I'm a journalist and a broadcaster from Ireland, and I specialise in EU and international news for the Irish media. And as Rini said, I'm going to moderate this first roundtable session. I'll also be back tomorrow moderating 2 more roundtables as well. And as Rini alluded to there, the core question we're going to explore over the next hour and a half or so is what kind of cooperation is needed between ASEAN and their development actors to support Southeast Asia in its transitions. And just to give you a little bit more context for this discussion, in September 2020, France was granted development partner status with ASEAN. And through its actions, AFD is already contributing to a partnership that will be strengthened in the coming years. So in addition to its work with most member countries, AFD also finances regional projects. So for example, AFD plans to finance a program to improve air quality in the cities or provinces of several Southeast Asian countries. It also participated in the 2019 creation of the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility. Now that's an initiative of ASEAN and the Asian Development Bank that aims to generate more than $1 billion in green infrastructure investments in Southeast Asia. So really the objective of this roundtable session is to explore what kind of cooperation and collaborations could be developed between the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and their development stakeholders. We have 4 speakers for this session. As I said, we'll have about 1 hour, 30 minutes in total. Please do submit any questions you may like to put to our panelists through the question channel on your screen, and I'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our 4 speakers. Michael Tene is the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN. Igor Dreismans is the EU Ambassador to ASEAN. Our third guest is Armida Alisjabana, the Executive Secretary of UN ESCAP. And our final speaker is Mindy Tang, a Senior Foreign Affairs Advisor to the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You're all very welcome to this event. We're all coming in at different time zones. So it's great to have you all with us. And I'm going to call on each one of you to make some opening remarks on the topic that you want to talk about. And then after that, I will moderate a question and answer session with all of you. So Michael Tene, I'd like to go to you first. can you please now take us through your presentation on the challenges of cooperation with different stakeholders for ASEAN, and also what way the institution works with different types of stakeholders? The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Karen. Selamat siang untuk Ibu Armida Alisyabana. Good afternoon also to Ambassador Igor. Good to share this conference with you, this panel. Greetings also to Ms. Mindy from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France, and also to all our participants who are listening into this conference. I'm very pleased to join this conference today to share some thoughts and views on some of ASEAN's main priorities, goals, as well as how we work with our partners, especially the external partners, to work together to achieve those goals. Okay, this is an outline of my presentation. Let me start by sharing with you our overall, goals or the big pictures of ASEAN's objectives and goals. Of course, the big picture is already contained in the ASEAN Charter, which is to develop ASEAN as a united organizations bound by a common desire and collective will to live in a region of peace, security, and stability with sustained economic growth, shared prosperity, and social progress. And we resolve to ensure sustainable development for the benefit of present and future generations, and to place the well-being, livelihood, and welfare of the peoples at the center of the ASEAN community building process. Overall, ASEAN is working to achieve the ASEAN Community Vision 2025 for an integrated, peaceful, and stable community with shared prosperity through the three pillars of ASEAN community, namely the ASEAN Political Security Community, the ASEAN Economic Community, and the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community. We fully understand that concerted efforts and cooperation with our external partners are key to reach or to realize this ASEAN Community Vision 2025, especially in addressing and overcoming current and emerging challenges in order to safeguard the lives and livelihood of our people. We also believe strongly that that our partners can contribute to our efforts to successfully realize a resilient, sustainable, and dynamic community that leaves no one behind. As part of our external relations, ASEAN continuously develop friendly relations, and mutually beneficial cooperations through dialogue and partnerships with friendly countries, with other sub-regional, regional, and international organizations to support the work across the three pillars of the ASEAN community. ASEAN continues to be the primary driving force in fostering regional collaboration and also making sure that ASEAN maintain its central role in the regional cooperation mechanisms that we are developing with our partners. To further contribute to the promotion of peace, stability, and security in the region, ASEAN is working closely through various ASEAN-led mechanisms. We have developed several important regional mechanisms, such as the ASEAN +1 mechanism with various dialogue partners. Currently, we have 10 dialogue partners. We develop also the ASEAN +3 mechanism for cooperation between ASEAN, China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. We have also other sectoral bodies, sectoral cooperations, such as the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting, plus means that the involvement of other partners, the ASEAN Regional Forum, as well as the East Asia Summit, which is the main regional platform for dialogue among the countries in Southeast Asia, as well as the major powers around the region. ASEAN has also adopted the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, which serves as a framework to guide cooperation in the region, in the Indo-Pacific region, with the aim of promoting an enabling environment for peace, stability, and prosperity, to address common challenges, to uphold rule-based regional architecture, and promoting a closer economic cooperation. The ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific calls for cooperation in the areas of maritime cooperation, connectivity, attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as on economic and other possible areas of cooperation. In conducting ASEAN's external relations, ASEAN have conferred the status of dialogue partners, of sectoral dialogue partners, and development partners to our partner. To date, there are 11 full dialogue partners of ASEAN, 4 sectoral dialogue partners, and 4 development partners. Together with Italy, France is one of the newest development partners, status which was conferred in 2020, as has been mentioned by Karen. And this year, the United Kingdom has also been made as ASEAN full dialogue partners. The EU, of course, is also one of our long-standing dialogue partners. In addition, the non-governmental organizations or the civil society organizations also play an important role in the development cooperation that are being developed between ASEAN and its external partners, especially by acting as the implementing agencies of the cooperation projects and programs. An example is the cooperation with the ASEAN Disability Forum as the implementing agency for the mainstreaming, for the initiative of mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities project, which aims to ensure the meaningful participation of disabled people organizations. And we do this by establishing a working group and conducting policy dialogues to strengthen the participation of disabled people organizations, by also doing research in the circumstances of peoples with disabilities in ASEAN member states. In achieving the ASEAN Community Vision 2025, ASEAN entities such as the ASEAN Foundations also work closely with the NGOs and the CSOs based in ASEAN member states in areas that aim to accelerate the economic growth, social progress, and cultural development in our region. And we also have institutions like the ASEAN Institute for Peace and Reconciliations, who works also with various stakeholders to strengthen peace, conflict management, and conflict resolutions in the region. This kind of cooperation have been and would continue to be an effective tool to gather more concerted efforts and joint resources for the strengthening and sharing of experience, as well as accelerating development within our region and beyond. In the last 2 years, of course, as also happening around the world, we are facing increasing uncertainties following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemics that affect the political, social, and economic aspect of our society. ASEAN is undertaking corrective actions and coordinated policies toward combating the pandemic, as well as accelerating the post-pandemic recovery through various initiatives that we have introduced, such as the establishment of the COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund, the establishment of the ASEAN Regional Reserve Medical Supplies for Public Health Emergencies, the establishment of the ASEAN Center for Public Health Emergencies and Emerging Diseases, the setting up of an ASEAN Travel Corridor Arrangement, as well as the adoption of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plan. In this regard, I think it is worth to note that our cooperation with external partners have greatly contributed to the implementation of all these initiatives to address our immediate challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And going forward, we look forward to many more cooperation with our external partners, including with France. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN has continuously developed and implemented various cooperation programs and projects which aim at supporting ASEAN's overall goal of integration, as well as efforts to realize a well-integrated ASEAN community. The programs and projects are designed to address challenges at the regional level by engaging all ASEAN member states or support specific programs such as the Initiative for ASEAN Integration. The Initiative for ASEAN Integration, for those of you who are not familiar with, is the long-running program for ASEAN to ensure that we can narrow the development gap between the more established ASEAN members with the new, relatively new ASEAN members, particularly.
Oh, have we just lost Michael? Is it just me, or Armida and Mindy, have you also lost Michael? Yes, okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So Michael's line may have gone down. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to move on to our next speaker. We'll bring Michael back online and we'll get him to finish his presentation once our next speaker has delivered his presentation, just in case there's an issue with the line. By the way, if you're just joining us, you're all very welcome. I'm Karen Coleman. I'm a journalist and broadcaster from Ireland, and I'm moderating today's first roundtable session for this particular event. Now, let's move on to our second speaker. It's my pleasure now to introduce Igor Dreismans, the EU ambassador to ASEAN. Ambassador Dreismans is going to tell us more about how the EU currently works with ASEAN, what are their strategic priorities, and what are the challenges and opportunities of such a partnership. Ambassador, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and over to you now.
Thank you very much, Karen. I hope you can hear me fine. I see Michael is trying to reconnect, but in the meantime, I might just present briefly what I had to say before you might turn back to him. I prepared a few slides, if you could show those, but let me first start with greeting the different speakers today. Of course, His Excellency Michael Tene, ASEAN Deputy Secretary General, His Excellency Armida Al-Shabana, Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Madame Mindy Ting from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and of course the guests and audience today. Let me also thank the AFD and the organizers for this discussion on a very timely topic. The questions covered by this conference touched not only upon the challenges that Southeast Asia is facing, but also on how we as partners can support a green, sustainable and inclusive transition. Now, I said it's very timely because this conference comes just a week after we as the European Union presented our strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. And one of the messages of the strategy for the Indo-Pacific was really that of a commitment to increased engagement within the region. And for us, it's really an inclusive strategy, an agenda for cooperation, not an agenda for confrontation, and identifying 7 areas for deeper partnership in the Indo-Pacific. And ASEAN really is at the very heart of the strategy, reflecting our strong commitment to ASEAN centrality. I counted it, ASEAN is actually mentioned 31 times in the strategy. And we start out the strategy by setting out why, and maybe that's also a good start of my short introduction here. Why? What are our interests in the Indo-Pacific and with ASEAN in particular? And I would mention three main interests from a European perspective. The first one, maybe the most obvious one, is economic. ASEAN countries, we know, experience solid growth even throughout this corona pandemic, and are expected to be the world's fourth largest economy by 2030. And they're also having a very rapidly expanding middle class, offering a lot of trade and business opportunities for Europe. I might add that the EU is still by far the largest investor in ASEAN countries. Secondly, we have a security and a political interest. We know that regional stability is being challenged. We know that there's a lot of big power competition ongoing in the region, which can create tensions. We see that with global military spending, which increased from 20% in 2009 to 28% in 2019 as share of the Indo-Pacific within global military spending, and so on and so forth. And for us, I might add, it's not a far away issue. Just think about the South China Sea and the kind of trade, European trade that passes through those straits. You understand how despite being far away, there is a direct connection. And lastly, maybe most forgotten, is an environmental interest. We see that ASEAN is increasingly a CO2 emitter, needing significant decarbonization. I might add the issue of biodiversity here, as ASEAN is really a hotspot for biodiversity. So in short, these are some of the interests that we have in ASEAN in Southeast Asia. So here, this second slide shows you, say, the four big pillars of our strategic partnership, which we concluded with ASEAN in December last year. Our main areas of cooperation span economy and security cooperation, as well as sustainable connectivity and sustainable development. These areas have been identified in dialogue with ASEAN and its member states, but also build on the added value that we would see for us as a regional integration actor ourselves. Now, this is a quick overview. It's probably in too small print for viewers to see what exactly is written there, but this gives you an overview of our cooperation portfolio with ASEAN. And the first thing I'd mention is that our cooperation portfolio is actually over 250 million euro with ASEAN as an organization. So the regional spending, which makes us ASEAN's largest development partner. So you'll understand it's 2021, so we're now preparing the next cycle of say, cooperation spending. And as mentioned there, this comes in addition to the bilateral cooperation that we have with individual ASEAN member states, especially with some of the poorer ones. We have very substantial envelopes. You will also see that we have a lot of investment in the so-called social-cultural pillar of ASEAN, in higher education and student mobility, in emergency response or humanitarian interest, in biodiversity, in supporting Southeast Asia in overcoming the health pandemic, and so on. Also very long-standing support in the economic areas and trade facilitation, on sustainable infrastructure investment, and so on. Maybe a bit more new is some of the work that we do in the political and security pillar of ASEAN, such as on CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear risk mitigation. Now, one of the things that we've tried to do increasingly with ASEAN and with our member states is to work more and more hand in hand with EU member states as part of a Team Europe approach. Team Europe is what we see as the EU member states, but also the development banks, including the AFD, trying to come together to mobilize a joint response to global challenges. And what we do in and with ASEAN is no exception to that. So last year, Team Europe mobilized over 800 million in assistance to fight the health and socio-economic impact of the pandemic, I would think more than any other partner of ASEAN. So this is the financial support, but we really embed this in a political context. We were the first ones to have a foreign ministers meeting on the coronavirus back in early 2020. We also have a number of expert dialogues. We'd actually had 2 on issues such as vaccine authorization, distribution, logistics, and other challenges. And of course, there's the issue of vaccines themselves, vaccine delivery. Let me just add that around the world, we delivered more than 700 million doses to third countries, which is as much as we do deliver to Europeans, so internally. Moving to another area, which is our environment and climate change cooperation. I think here we share with ASEAN a joint wish to build back better, build back greener. We know, you know, that in the EU we have presented a plan to restructure our economy to make it environmentally sustainable. The plan is called the European Green Deal, which should basically chart the path for the EU to become climate neutral by 2050, and basically sets also ambitious targets in the area of climate and energy for 2030. Now, all of these areas that are here are areas where we try to work on with ASEAN as well. When we speak about promoting clean energy, we're working on a energy dialogue, clean energy dialogue with ASEAN. When we speak about eliminating pollution or plastic pollution, we work with ASEAN. We've recently introduced a new project with ASEAN to support ASEAN smart green cities, biodiversity, circular economy, you name it, is a booming agenda of our cooperation. And moving forward, this is really something that we would like to do more on with ASEAN member states, but also with the group of countries, the regional grouping, as well as, again, try to work as much as possible in a Team Europe effort together with our member states. Now, the last slide I wanted to show you is on connectivity, which is another big area of work. Again, it's an area which is for us embedded in a political, say, joint expression of joint desire expressed by our ministers to work together. We had a joint statement on the matter of connectivity. And you see it spans different areas: trade, transport, energy, digital, but also human dimension, people to people. And what we saw is that we have 2 strategies. We have the European strategy for connectivity, but we also have an ASEAN strategy, so-called master plan impact in ASEAN terms. And there's a lot of overlaps between them on these different areas. Moreover, both of us, both EU and ASEAN, we are kind of connectivity projects ourselves internally. That's what we do in a way. Regional integration can also be seen as another word for connectivity. So really, there's a lot of joint desire to work together. And a lot of grounds to work together. So that deals with, that we're talking about investment, financial investment where we work again together with our Team Europe partners such as AFD to mobilize private and public investment. One example is the ASEAN Green Catalytic Finance Facility. We're talking about financial cooperation in the areas, for example, of trade facilitation, our RISE Plus program. In the area of people to people, I think about our SHARE program. But we're also talking about some legal agreements. We recently concluded a comprehensive air transport agreement with ASEAN, which is the first block-to-block air transport agreement, which covers market access issues, but a lot more, from safety to air traffic management and so on. So this whole connectivity area is really another booming area of our work, where we work closely together with ASEAN, with the Secretariat, with sectoral bodies, with ASEAN member states representative, and so on. Some of the bodies that also Michael has listed. So, voilà, I think I'll stop here, Karen, and happy to listen to the other speakers and take any questions. Thank you very much.
I think Karen has frozen for the moment. I'm not sure if she can hear me or if she will come back, but I can otherwise go to our next speaker, who Armida, Alice Banana, Executive Secretary of UNESCO. When Karen comes back, I'm sure she will take over. Our next speaker, then, I probably have jumped to speaker, but to play safe, to give Karen a chance to come back, I'm going to Armida. And so, Armida, you're our third speaker today. You're Executive Secretary of UNESCO, and your presentation will focus on UNESCAP's work with ASEAN, including some of the key issues they dealt with and their working methodologies. You're very welcome indeed to this session, Armida, and you have about 10 minutes, and then later on you'll come back for the questions. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Renee. And also thank you very much to the organizer for this good opportunity to share, especially ESCAP's not only work, but focus areas with regard to this ongoing current situation of the pandemic and the way forward for a more inclusive, more resilient, and a green and blue recovery, including in Southeast Asia. But before I go to my presentation, let me greet the speakers, Mr. Michael Tane, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN. Selamat sore, Pak Michael. Also, Ambassador Igor Dreisman, EU Ambassador to ASEAN. Very good afternoon. And Ms. Mindy Tang from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. A very good morning, as well as to all participants that have joined this event or conference. Let me start. I don't know whether I can use the presentation. I've prepared a few slides. Yeah, just like 4 slides. Okay. Yeah. So let me start with the first slide. So in terms of priority areas of cooperation, Southeast Asia. Yeah. In our context, UN context, Southeast Asia comprises of ASEAN, the 10 countries, plus Timor-Leste. So if we refer to Southeast Asia, not necessarily only ASEAN, yeah, but of course, majority of our member states would be ASEAN in this context, but also to include Timor-Leste. So the ongoing priority areas of our work includes social protection, building resiliency, and enhancing connectivity. Social protection is especially how to scale up the social protection Of course, several countries are already in advanced stage in their implementation of social protection, but many countries are still in the initial stage. And with the pandemic, the exacerbated the vulnerability and so on, so therefore the priority to scale up, accelerate social protection, it becomes an urgent priority. Building resiliency used to be only a disaster-related resiliency, but now with pandemic, to include also health resiliency as well as climate change. So this triple nexus, actually, pandemic, disaster, and health, and connectivity is in the broader context. Not only transport-related connectivity, but also IT, ICT, which is a big thing now, as well as energy connectivity. And to include in the connectivity is the trade value chain, because connectivity has to go hand in hand with the economic activity, which is in our region, not only Southeast Asia, but the rest of Asia, which drives the economy is the value chain through trade. And our engagement with ASEAN is within the framework of ASEAN UN Plan of Action. Now is the second phase, and within that, ASEAN UN Plan of Action is the complementarities roadmap between ASEAN Vision 2025 and SDGs, or Sustainable Development. And since the COVID-19, ASEAN, with its comprehensive recovery framework, we also becomes one of the partner. Let me now go to the next slide, which is this framework. So this framework comes from our annual commission session, which was held for this year in April 2021. 17 leaders meaning President, Prime Minister, participated, including several from Southeast Asia, Prime Minister of Thailand, President Joko Widodo from Indonesia, among others, Prime Minister Hun Sen, among others, and 34 ministerial level. And from their statement, so we put it into one slide, which is basically this slide, that I'm showing participants right now, which basically priority-wise, what the leaders want, or what the leaders ask to be supported, or including their vision, is basically two. One is public health related because of COVID-19 pandemic, with three priorities: diagnosis meaning testing, the vaccination, as well as therapeutics, which everybody recognize. No country can do it alone. So therefore, cross-country collaboration, global collaboration, regional collaboration, cooperation is of utmost importance. And countries ask the Secretariat, in this case ESCAP, as well as the UN family, to support the countries. Second is how to recover better together. Better together meaning what? Meaning more inclusive, meaning more resilient, and also meaning more sustainable. So therefore, the inclusive, including social protection that I already mentioned earlier, the healthcare, universal healthcare coverage, strengthening healthcare system, as well as human resources. Resilient is, again, the triple nexus, health, disaster, as well as climate, but also within, the resilience within, for example, the value chain, the trade, and the connectivity, how to build resiliency within the trade value chain, as well as connectivity, as well as more sustainable, of course. And then in this context is the idea of how to advance. This is not a new idea, but how to advance further in the current context, the green, blue recovery. Why blue? Because many countries in our region, because Asia Pacific, we're talking about Asia Pacific, not only Southeast Asia, are also archipelagic countries, including Pacific, right? Including several in South Asia, including in Southeast Asia. So therefore, not only green, but also blue recovery. Climate action, for sure, and energy transition. Why energy? Because Asia Pacific is or contributing more than 50% of global CO2 emission, and the majority comes from the energy sector. So therefore, energy transition is key. Yeah? If we also pay attention to last week GA, General Assembly, including leader statement, Secretary General, UN Secretary General statement, all are urging the priority on energy transition. And the two at the bottom, finance and digitalization, is basically the mainstream. Yeah, because we, of course, to be able to advance all these priorities, you need financing, but at the same time, countries are facing a lot of fiscal challenges, if not fiscal distress, some countries. So therefore, what would be the solution from the fiscal side, but at the same time also how to develop or advance this innovative financing strategies as well as instrument, and to harness the power of digitalization. Yeah, for sure.
Armida, have we lost your sound? Can the other contributors hear Armida? If you just nod or no.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to the next slide, which basically I'm not going to dwell into this particular slide, but just showing in this particular slide is ESCAP's policy engagement in Southeast Asia through policy dialogue, high-level policy dialogue, which is supporting again our priority areas of work in the Southeast Asia context that I alluded earlier: this social protection, building resiliency, as well as enhancing connectivity. And then within the framework of ASEAN UN Plan of Action, including the complementarities roadmap, ASEAN Vision 2025 and SDGs, as well as within the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. So all these just examples, a few of the activities. And my last slide is that, again, I would like to reiterate again the importance of also how to direct the recovery efforts, including the various stimulus policy packages towards this more inclusive, resilient, and green blue economies or blue recoveries. Yeah. So including from the policy stimulus packages, and we've been doing, including with several ASEAN countries, this policy scenario, policy macroeconomic modeling with scenario and so on. And then we put several alternative policy scenario, and then what would be the outcome, for the economy, also in terms of inclusiveness and resiliency, and how much would it cost and how to finance that. Yeah. So this is the first, let's say, that engagement that we are also supporting several of the ASEAN or Southeast Asia member states. And of course, all this is in line with the complementary roadmap 2020-2025, in which in the complementary roadmap there are 6 priority areas. Again, those are poverty reduction, infrastructure connectivity, sustainable management of natural resources that now becomes high priority because of climate change, sustainable consumption production likewise become very high priority, resilience, the triple nexus I mentioned earlier, as well as the priority areas of our engagement through capacity building, aside from the high level policy dialogue. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion. Over to you, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Armida. And I don't know what happened earlier. I disappeared off the screen. And thanks to Rini, who's been there watching very carefully behind the scenes to ensure there's somebody there for these emergencies. Now, our final speaker for this session is Mindy Tang, the head of the Southeast Division at the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs. And Mindy's topic for discussion is France as a partner in ASEAN's development. Mindy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And I would like first to greet my the other speakers, Michael Tinney, who is the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN. Good morning. Igor Drismans, Ambassador of the EU to the ASEAN, and Mrs. Amida Ali-Shabana, Executive Secretary of UNESCO from the UN, and I'm very glad that I could take part to this roundtable, and I wish to thank the AFD for organizing this very timely conference. Let me first start with well, a few elements on what France is doing in Southeast Asia. Our ties with South Asia are rooted in history, and this is one of the reasons why we're so present in the region.
Mindy, are you there?
I'm there, but it looks like my camera is
your camera
off.
Yeah, so I think there, oh, here we are. There are a few gremlins in this system this morning, but anyway, we can see you again. And even if we can see you, you can still continue to talk because we can hear you, but continue on.
Oh, well, so a few elements on what we're doing here in Southeast Asia. Just tell you that we have, because of our history, we are very present in Southeast Asia, and just a few, figures. We have 140 agency offices, cultural and cooperation centers, research institutes, and structural programs in Southeast Asia. So it tells you how deeply involved we are in the region. Our country has followed ASEAN's development from the outset. Along with Singapore, France contributed to creating the Asia-Europe meeting, ASEAN, in 1996. And France was the first European country to accede to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in 2007. Our ambition now is to take a step forward, enter a new phase of relations with ASEAN, and the creation of this development partnership with ASEAN is part of this ambition. This ambition also falls into the implementation of the French Indo-Pacific strategy. And I would like to seize this opportunity to stress that France is more than ever committed to the implementation of our Indo-Pacific strategy. Partnerships evolve, but you don't change geography. France remains a nation from the Indo-Pacific. And again, a few figures. We have 2 million French citizens living in the Indo-Pacific, and more than 90% of our exclusive economic zone lies in this area. Igor has already stressed it, but I would like to recall it again. We see this region as the economic and strategic center of gravity of the planet. Its stability, its prosperity, its ability to preserve climate and biodiversity will have a decisive impact on the rest of the planet. And France not only remains committed to its strategy, but welcomes EU's strategy, as Igor has already mentioned, that is going to be adopted in a few weeks. We are very committed to supporting ASEAN central role in the Indo-Pacific. The ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific highlights numerous convergences with the French strategy. I'm talking about the respect for international law, multilateralism, and ASEAN is a perfect example for that, and international cooperation. It is very much in our interest to work together to implement these common principles. Many of the current French projects in the region are already consistent with key cooperation priorities stated in the AOIP, and we are very much willing to further impact our cooperation with other partners. First of all, the European Union, but also with Japan, South Korea, and others in the Indo-Pacific area. Coming to our partnership, which is very recent, it has been officially launched only 6 months ago. We had our first meeting of the ASEAN-France Development Partnership Committee in March, and we are currently working on with the ASEAN Secretariat on drafting the list of practical cooperation areas for 2022 and 2026. The zero draft will share with France in August. And we are aiming at concluding the negotiations before the end of this year. From France's standpoint, we believe that there are several areas of cooperation where France could bring an added value with a view of supporting the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. First of all, on the protection of biodiversity and the fight against climate change. Through projects that have demonstrated impact at the regional level in the areas of sustainable infrastructure, energy transition, air quality improvement, or the fight against marine plastic pollution. In view of the COP26 in Glasgow, we believe that it is very important to share common ambitious objectives for our respective national determined contribution, and by concrete actions such as limiting the use of coal in general. Second area of cooperation, we would like to support building a sustainable economy. France has a robust experience in agroecology and sustainable food system, blue economy, sustainable tourism, in link with the preservation of the region's invaluable cultural and historical heritage, an effort to which France has been contributing since the beginning of the 20th century. Third area, that would be obviously on health, with a focus on the One Health approach. And the crisis triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that the interconnection between environmental issue and the emergence of a new infectious disease is clearly obvious. In this area, let me share some concrete examples of the work we intend to carry out. We are preparing an innovative regional project that's called One Health in Practice in Southeast Asia. It has been, we've been working on it for about a year. It should contribute to prevent the development of infectious disease in the ASEAN countries by improving the information of political leaders and strengthening their ability to prevent and respond to future public health crises. Another concrete project is the implementation of the Preserve Initiative. It brings together more than 1,000 researchers across 5 continents, and it will combine research projects and operational actions to prevent the risk of zoonotic emergencies and pandemics. Our research institute, CIRAD and IRD, who have a permanent base in several ASEAN countries, will implement these initiatives. To conclude, I wish to reassert that France is and remains an Indo-Pacific nation, and this is all the surer since the European Union has, as Igor already said, released its own Indo-Pacific communication this month. And one thing we would like to stress is that the European strategy will be one of cooperation, non-confrontation. To quote what the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy has just recently said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mindy. Now, I want to bring Michael Tene back in, because Michael, like myself, your connection went down and you hadn't finished your presentation. So can you kindly maybe just summarize some of the additional points you wanted to make before we get on to the question and answer session? So over to you now again.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Unfortunately, I don't have a backup like you, so I have to to redo some of the. I have to continue my presentation. Okay, before I was cut off, I was talking about the overall goals of ASEAN's objectives, as well as our overall relations with our dialogue partners, with our partners that are helping us in through a partnership for us to achieve our objectives. Now I would like to continue to more specific topics on how we actually work with our with each of our partners in terms of working together to develop cooperation between our respective partners and ASEAN. As have been also shown in the presentation by Ambassador Igor and Her Excellencies Ibu Armida, they both mentioned about the plan of actions. That is basically one way of ASEAN to develop concrete cooperation with our partners. So we typically develop what we call the plan of actions with each of our partners. And this plan of actions usually runs for several years, usually about 4 or 5 years. And in the plan of action, we have we negotiated with our partners specific projects, specific areas of cooperation that we would like to go through during the time period of the plan of actions. Aside from the plan of actions, we also develop with our partners the fund, which is a very important component for us to be able to realize this plan of actions. So usually our partners set aside the funds to support the development cooperation with ASEAN. Generally, there are two types of funding modalities between ASEAN and our partners to implement joint cooperation programs, projects, and activities. First is the establishment of a dedicated cooperation fund, a trust fund, that are placed at and managed by the ASEAN Secretariat. The second type is the establishment of a dedicated fund managed by our partners directly through a consortium or directly by their government to finance and implement the plan of action that we have agreed together. The first type, for instance, what we have with China, the ASEAN-China Cooperation Fund, with Japan, with the Japan-ASEAN Integration Fund, with India, ASEAN-India Fund, with Korea, with the ASEAN ROK Cooperation Fund, and others. The second type, for example, is the arrangement that we have with Australia, the European Union, France, Germany, Italy, New Zealand, the US, and others. In terms of managing the project programs, there are also two different approaches that we have with our partners. First is what we call the project management teams, establishing a project management teams that will manage the funding as well as the whole program that we have agreed upon in the plan of actions. The second approach is, of course, the cooperation with partners without dedicated project management teams. In this case, usually their respective missions or embassies in Jakarta will work closely with the Secretariat in reviewing proposals and monitoring implementation of project and so on. that is basically the overview of how the ASEAN development cooperation works with our partners. But before I conclude my presentation, I would just to touch upon the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific that have been mentioned by Ambassador Igor as well as by Ms. Min. The ASEAN Indo-Pacific outlook, ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific was launched in 2019. We begin our discussion within ASEAN in 2018. So within a year, we are able to produce this outlook. The outlook, as have been mentioned earlier, it covers 4 areas of cooperation. But basically, what is important is that the purpose of this cooperation is to help build or strengthen confidence as well as trust among countries in the region, in the Indo-Pacific region, with ASEAN in its at the center of this regional cooperation. The 4 areas of cooperation are areas that we thought are of interest not only for ASEAN but also for other major stakeholders in the Indo-Pacific region. And we hope that through the cooperation in addressing these 4 areas of mutual interest, we can not only achieve concrete outcomes in each of the particular areas of cooperation, but more importantly, we can foster confidence, greater trust among the participants through this cooperation. With that, I'll give back the screen to you, Karen, and look forward for the Q&A. Thank you.
Great, brilliant. Thank you so much, Michael, and thanks for dealing with the logistical issues. Now, what I'm going to do is moderate a Q&A session. We have until 1:15. I'm going to take a mix of questions I'd like to put to the panelists, and then we also have questions that have been coming in from you. But maybe actually, if I can start with you, Michael, because there was a question here from Priyanti Fernando. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Priyanti. And he wants to know, specifically addressed to you, Michael, liked the initiative, and sorry, Priyanti may be female as well, so forgive me. Priyanti liked the initiative with people with disabilities and the vision for ASEAN integration, but please, how are you including women and migrants in this vision, and how are you dealing with countries' conflict or conflicts in countries, affected countries like Myanmar? Perhaps, Michael, you could answer that question.
Thank you very much. The issue of people with disabilities have been in the agenda of ASEAN for quite some time. And we have been working closely throughout the 3 pillars of community to ensure that especially the needs and the access of the people with disabilities are being addressed by member states as well as by the ASEAN as a whole. And this we do not only through the socio-cultural pillar, which is the main pillars for this, but also on the economic pillar as well as the political security pillar, especially in terms of the right of people of disabilities. Women role in ASEAN is also a very important one for us. The agenda member states have increasingly dedicated importance of the role of women in the ASEAN cooperation. We are in the political security pillar, especially the agenda of the women in peace and security. The WPS agenda is now becoming more mainstreaming, and we have done several activities with our partners to gain more information, gain more ideas, as well as to socialize this and disseminate this concept to our stakeholders. Of course, one of the main goal of ASEAN is to ensure that peace and stability in our region are being maintained or even strengthened. and peace and stability in our region, are affected by various factors. It can be affected by a relationship between ASEAN member states. It can be affected by the relationship between ASEAN and external powers, but it also can be affected by the development within the member states. And that is why, while we are, of course, we adhere to the principle of non-interference, because non-interference is an important principle in international relations, in which you are not trying to interfere with other countries' domestic issues, because it will only aggravate the situation. But at the same time, we are also extending our hands to help our members whenever they are having the difficulties. We are extending our hands to work closely with them with a view to assist them, to help them address the problem that they are facing. And specifically on the issue of Myanmar, I think everyone knows from the news that in April this year, the leaders of ASEAN have met in Jakarta in the Secretariat building to have a leaders meeting in which they come up with the 5-point of consensus. And this 5-point consensus reached at that meeting was also agreed upon by the leaders of Myanmar that attended that meeting. And now we are working to implement this 5-point of consensus that have been reached at the ASEAN leaders meeting, together with the Myanmar authority, to ensure that the situation in Myanmar can be resolved in a peaceful way, taking also as a priority the interests and the well-being of people in Myanmar.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much for that. If I can go to you, Ambassador, in your presentation there, you talked about areas that you have concentrated on during the previous funding program, and the fact that you're going to be preparing your next round. What do you think will be the EU's priorities in terms now of the areas it's going to focus on during the next 7-year funding period?
Thanks a lot, Karen. I think we focus on 2 areas specifically, and I touched upon them in my presentation. Really, the first one is, say, the green agenda. And when I say green agenda, I mean it in a very kind of a large sense. So we go from protecting biodiversity to the green transition to tackling marine debris and so on and so forth. So I think that will be priority area number 1. Priority area number 2, I also touched upon briefly, is the area of connectivity. And then maybe not necessarily we're talking about road infrastructure, but we're talking about digital connectivity. We're really talking about, say, the new challenges that we all face, be it in the European Union or in ASEAN. We've built up quite a bit of expertise on that already in our programs and projects with ASEAN. Also sometimes talk about trade integration, trade facilitation. The area of people connectivity shouldn't be forgotten. But I think those will be the 2 main areas, say the green agenda and connectivity. And those will also be the areas where we will try to bring in as much as possible member states, colleagues in a kind of a joint effort.
And just on the green agenda, it is a very ambitious one. You refer to the 2050 targets. There's the intervening one, the Fit for 55 target as well. Will you be expecting the same goals from the ASEAN network of countries?
Well, of course, we'd like everybody to commit to climate neutrality as soon as possible. But I think there's an understanding that everybody has to go by its own pace. I think the recent also UN reports show just how urgent it is that we all tackle this and that we all go to climate neutrality as soon as possible. but we'll be working with the different ASEAN countries to basically accompany them at the pace that they will take, in line with the different COP engagement, starting from Paris up to what will happen at the end of this year.
And there's just one question specifically for you as well before I go to the rest of our panelists, Ambassador. Our attendee wants to know, how can the EU cooperation with ASEAN strengthen your bilateral cooperation with countries in terms of the impacts of the projects of EU finances in and with the countries?
That's a fair question. Of course, we try to really, again, work this in a kind of a team effort. So give you one example on biodiversity, where we work with specifically the Center of Biodiversity in the Philippines, but it's part of a wider ASEAN agenda whereby they build, say, biodiversity, natural heritage parks across the region. So it really has to go hand in hand. The regional level has to support the bilateral level, and vice versa. I realize it's sometimes easier said than done, but we do our best.
Okay, Ambassador, thank you very much. Stay with us, because I want to go now back to Armida Alice Jabana. A number of questions for you as well, Armida, but I suppose maybe first of all, because you talked about, and it's been mentioned several times, the impact of COVID. And as the region was hit significantly by the COVID-19 virus, what is UNESCAP doing to address the socio-economic impacts for the region from the coronavirus?
Yes, again, if I may, I would like to start by showing the impact, because by showing the impact, then it relates also on priority areas of support, including with ASEAN. So the impact of COVID-19 in terms of if we use several SDG indicators. If you use several SDG indicators, several have been quite in progress, even before COVID-19. Those that are in progress are actually on the health related, some progress, and is also on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Several countries, as you know, in Southeast Asia, have been achieved significant progress in terms of infrastructure development and so on, including innovation. And some also progress have been achieved on poverty, on zero hunger, relates to malnutrition, as well as on education, especially not so much access to education. Access are quite already there, in a majority of countries, but on the quality of education, also some progress, as well as reduce inequalities, because inequality used to be quite a big issue, in many countries in Southeast Asia. Of course, it's still an issue, but the past few years we see some progress. So which is good, some progress. And then, of course, this pandemic exacerbated the vulnerability, the inequality, and so on. But one areas which have been consistently, there have been lack of progress, not only stagnant, even going in the wrong way, are climate action or climate change related, as well as SDG 14. Climate action is SDG 13, as well as SDG 14, life below water, which is ocean related and marine resources and so on. So based on that, our support to ASEAN, of course, in coordination, cross collaboration with ASEAN through the ASEAN Secretariat, reflected that. So including in times of pandemic. Again, in times of pandemic, so basically there's two pillars here, which I alluded earlier, on the health related, as well as on the how also to forge the direction towards recovery better, stronger, and also smarter. And maybe in the recovery, I would like to reiterate again, because of the close link with climate change. Yeah, one particular area that we focus on with ASEAN, the climate change, including also air pollution. Yeah, air pollution. This has not been mentioned specifically, but we also work specifically focus on air pollution, which is in tandem, yeah, CO2 emission and air pollution. And the source of air pollution differs across the region, including Southeast Asia. Some forests, some, but energy sector for sure, and some also because of agriculture residue. Yeah, which again, yeah, this is quite interesting. Some parts of the Southeast Asia is that. Yeah, so we are working on that. Yeah, so those are the priority areas: mitigation of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the direction for recovery, better, smarter, and more inclusive. Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Armida. And we may well indeed have people who'd like to ask you more about those issues. But before I go back to you, I want to go to Mindy. An interesting question for you, Mindy, as well. So how does French development cooperation with the ASEAN countries participate or complement perhaps France's policy at large when it comes to climate change and the preservation of biodiversity?
Well, thank you very much for this question. Both, are very much focused on the very same objectives. I would like to give just a few examples. I told you that climate change and biodiversity are very likely to be one of the main lines of our partnership with ASEAN, and it concurs with the efforts that we nationally do in order to push these objectives. Our president has just organized, a One Planet Summit on biodiversity that was in January 2021, this is he stressed the efforts that need to be reached, and at the same time, during the very same summit, he announced that 30% of France's climate-related bilateral aid programs will also benefit biodiversity preservation, and this objective should be reached by 2030. So this is like one concrete example on how the two of them go together. Tropical, on another example on biodiversity is we have launched an alliance for the preservation of tropical forests at the G7 summit in 2019, and we are advocating for ASEAN countries to join this alliance, and it also concurs with our efforts for conservation program, and we are very glad that we could and the EU has gave us some funds in order to start a conservation program in Laos to preserve Siamese crocodiles and endangered species. So it's a very focused efforts, and we're very glad that we could work with the EU on that those objectives.
Okay, Mindy, thank you very much for that. Very interesting. Maybe I can go back to you, Michael. How is the ASEAN network going to be able to work on and implement those demands, if you like, or those requirements from funders such as, France and the EU in general? What would be your concerns about their requirements?
Thank you. Well, of course, ASEAN works with a lot of partners. Like I mentioned earlier, we have 11 full dialogue partners, 4 sectoral partners, 4 development partners, and each of the partners has their own unique features of the cooperation. And therefore, when we developed the plan of actions with our respective partners, of course, it went through lengthy negotiations to ensure that the interest of ASEAN, of course, would be our priority. But at the same time, also that the interest of our partners are also accommodated in those plans. So I'm not too much worried about this so-called quote-unquote requirement because we have been working closely with many partners, each with its own unique features. And so far, we have always been able to find the consensus that can accommodate the interests of both parties. I think even some of the so-called requirements is actually are the same things that we in ASEAN also aspire to. So I don't think there is any major differences that can pose a serious hindrance into our cooperation with our partners. I think we in ASEAN we are quite pragmatic in working with our partners. And of course, if we cannot find an agreement, then we can agree not to pursue that particular areas and focus more on areas in which we can work together. But definitely, I think over time, I don't see too many divergence between ASEAN and our partners. I think we all share the same objectives. We are also sharing many norms and values, the universal norms and values that we share. And that is why, because we have so many areas in which our interests are actually, we are sharing the same interests. That is why we can work very well with many of our partners, including our friends in EU, which has been our partners for, I forgot, I think since the 70s, Pak Igor. Yeah? We're a very long-standing partners, as well as now France as our one of the new development partners of ASEAN. Thank you.
Well, maybe back to you, Ambassador, on that then. How can the EU maybe further improve its collaborations with the ASEAN network?
Well, first, let me agree 100% with Michael. It won't surprise you. I think we always find a good pragmatic agreement. Sometimes it takes a while to discuss because there's a lot of discussions to be had, but we always find good ways forward. I mean, in terms of improving the work, the cooperation, I would come back to probably the same points I've made before. I think we need to try to find a way to better integrate. Integrate is maybe not the best word, but to work together even more closely with the EU member states. I mean, France, we work obviously well together, but we now have development partners, Germany, Italy. There's others who are coming, and that's of course very good. I think the challenge will be to try to come and present this also as a collective team effort. The other challenge maybe is, apart from our cooperation, we also have a number of dialogues. We actually have 20 different dialogues on different topics, from construction standards to fisheries, you name it. We have actually a structured dialogue on it. Now, linking the outcome of that dialogue with our financial cooperation, I think, is one of the issues we need to probably improve on. But I think what we've learned over the past couple of years, indeed, since before I was born, probably it gives us valuable lessons for improving our work further.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. And maybe sticking to the same theme about improvements, Armida Alice Jabana, if I can go back to you then. How do you think ASEAN and the UN and other development partners can play a greater role in supporting countries in the region?
Thank you very much for the question. Again, because of the immense challenges that we've been discussing, right, in this session, the immense challenges comprises of economic, social, as well as environmental challenges. Yeah. So therefore, we need also to step up in terms of cooperation and collaboration. Each one of us has its own, how do you say it, comparative, yeah, or competitive advantage, yeah, for sure. And so therefore, in terms of priority, if we could, again, yeah, harness on a certain priority areas and to have the impact that we would like to have. So I think it would be a good idea if development partners also come together. Of course, we are in close cooperation, collaboration with the ASEAN Secretariat, but from the development partner side also, yeah, if we could complement each other, if not come together, yeah, then the impact would be greater. So just take the example again, yeah, because this is one of the urgent issue, urgent challenge, climate change, yeah. Again, I heard that, priority on biodiversity and so on and so forth, yeah. But how we could also join forces, yeah, especially on climate change related priority areas. So therefore, maybe one particular priorities program or project, yeah, that I think would also be useful because it will also involve other stakeholders. So not only government, development partners, ASEAN Secretary, but also other stakeholders. If we want to accelerate, is how also to see the climate change challenges as an opportunity. Yeah, of course, is again, yeah, many already said that, yeah, but I mean, governments would be very, very interested, yeah, if they can see it as opportunities, economic opportunities, investment opportunities, yeah, business opportunities. Yeah, because if you, for example, I give you one example. If you want to accelerate energy transition, yeah, of course, institutions such as us, UN, yeah, we can help, yeah, in the SG7 roadmap, that kind of thing. But once you have to translate that, yeah, you need investment, you need business opportunity, then we need the partner, right, the private sector and so on. I think it would be good, yeah, if you also can direct it towards that. So it's more concrete. And then, like government is on, see results. That what then accelerates things.
Okay, I see Michael. Thank you very much, Armida. I see Michael, you want to come in, and I'd maybe just get a quick reaction from you too, Mindy. But Michael, to you first.
Thank you, Bu Armida. I just want to underline what Ibu Armida has mentioned about the importance of complementarity. We have on some issues the global agenda, we have the regional agenda, and of course we have our own the member states' national agenda as well. And it is very important to ensure that this agenda on the same issues at the various level complement one another. I think that will ensure not only the effective realizations of these common goals, but also an efficient one in which we don't misuse the limited resources that we have. And also, this is also important as well when we work with our partners. In case of ASEAN, as I mentioned, we have many partners that work with us, and one of our priorities is to make sure that our cooperation with each partners will not overlap in a wasteful way, and rather that make sure that each areas of cooperation or sub areas of cooperation complement one another. I think complementarity is a very important way, and to do that, of course, we need to have the transparency in terms of our policy, that transparency in the way we work, and a lot of dialogue as well to resolve many of the hurdles. Thank you.
Thank you. And a quick reaction from you, Mindy, on that concept of greater cooperation and what Armida was saying earlier too about business opportunities for potential investors.
Well, we are, I mean, very much supporting, raising business opportunities for, I mean, global objectives we're having, and this is something that's AFD is also trying to secure, which is having securing dual objective, which is at the same time launching projects that are good and positive for climate change, but at the same time support business. These are things the AFD has been doing through small loans. I mean, many other opportunities in terms of infrastructure. And this is, I mean, I can assure you that this is something we're working very hard on.
Okay, well, on that point, we leave our question and answer session and our first roundtable debate. Thank you so much again for participating, to our great speakers, Michael Tene, Igor Dreisman, Armida Alice Jabana, and finally, Mindy Tang. It was my pleasure to moderate this first roundtable discussion. I'll be back again tomorrow, but I'm going to hand over now to the wonderful Rini Wyndham, who rescued me earlier when my line went down. Rini, you did a fabulous job. The joys of virtual conference moderating. I'll hand over to you now. Thanks,
That's
Rini.
very kind. You recovered brilliantly. I'm so glad you did, but it's a great idea that we know what each other are doing, and it was great fun to jump in and rescue you rather unexpectedly. But thank you so much for such an inspiring conference. Karen, you moderated with great energy and vigor. Your speakers have been fantastic. I understood pretty well what all of you were saying, and I learned a huge amount. So thank you, each of you, for your contributions again. And we mustn't forget the technicians who've nobly sat through this whole morning or afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're in. And also, especially to Louise and Charlotte, who have worked incredibly hard all day, sending us messages, dealing with all the glitches, and it's been amazing morning. I hope you feel the same. We hope that you, I can't see my invisible audience, but I do hope that you too behind the screen have enjoyed this morning with us, the first day of our conference. It's not the same as being with you, as we often do in conferences, Karen and I, where we see our audience and we can interact, but we hope that you feel you're part of this in spite of it. And I hope we meet one day. But it's a chance for us to discover how Southeast Asia is looking to the future in its carbon reduction, in leveling out inequalities between and within populations, and in managing land and sea in a way that mitigates climate change. Now, this is very important. Tomorrow, you're going to have to register a second time. It's a different registration, so make very sure, there you can see it there on your screen as I speak, that you need to log in separately. Don't use today's registration. You must use tomorrow's for the 1st of October. So I'm sure that what you see here, you will see again tomorrow and register on that one. Tomorrow, we'll be looking more practically and in greater detail at some of the points that we've mentioned today. And we'll have 3 round tables, and the topics will be how, in practice, Southeast Asian countries will transition to green energy, how this will be financed, how the AFD can ensure this could be fairly implemented across Southeast Asia. We'll also be looking more closely at the Mekong River and Delta with its competing demands, and how we can safeguard biodiversity and even enhance it under the pressure of the needs of industry and of an increasing population. And also we'll examine how to ensure environmental justice for everybody. There's an awful lot to think about, a densely packed program again tomorrow, which starts at the same time as it did today in whichever time zone you happen to be. I'm very much looking forward to your ideas, your suggestions. You can go on sending them in. So whether you're watching us in Europe, in Southeast Asia, or in some other part of this large planet, on behalf of my nice colleague Karen Coleman, whom I've enjoyed listening to, and on behalf of the AFD, I'm Rini Wyndham. I wish you a pleasant afternoon, evening, or night, and I look forward to joining you again tomorrow. So from everybody here at the AFD, goodbye.